Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday Torah class. That's not too loud, is it? Is that too loud, Ward? Okay. All right. Let me open up with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for the beautiful day today. We ask as we look into your word that you would guide our hearts and lead us to what we should learn and see. We thank you so much for your word and all your blessings in Yehoshua's name. Amen. So since we're not going to be here for the next couple of weeks, and I just want those online to know that I won't be here. I'll probably be out there, but Ward's going to be doing a special type of lesson for 3, maybe 4 weeks. I don't really know. So what I wanted to do, if you look up here, you see this thing? It says it's about the 10 Commandments. And what I discovered, and I don't want you to think that I actually discovered it from reading. I read about it, and then I looked into it, and I said, hey, that's kind of cool. But basically, the portions we've been reading lately from Deuteronomy 12 down through 25:19, it follows a format of the 10 Commandments. And to give an example, well, we've been through the first 3. We're up to Deuteronomy 14:22, which would start the 4th commandment. So in Deuteronomy 12, we know that the first commandment is, I am Yahuwah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. So we see in that passage in Deuteronomy 12 that the children of Israel were commanded to destroy all the places of worship, of false worship, all the altars, all the pillars, all the Asherim poles. There was to be no evidence that they ever even existed. They were to be totally destroyed, annihilated, made to be totally out of existence. That's what he wanted for his people. Now, that's not exactly what they did, but that was his commandment. And from Deuteronomy 12:32 to 13:18, that was the chapter about what you would do with a person, a dreamer or a prophet who tried to lead you astray, or if your family members or those close to you tried to lead you astray, or if you discovered a city that had been led astray. So, of course, we know the second commandment is you shall not make for yourself a carved image of any likeness, etc., etc. Basically dealing with idolatry. So, in Deuteronomy 13, these commandments are, what do you do to those who are leading you into idolatry? Does that make sense? And then last week we covered Deuteronomy 14:1 through 21, which dealt with pagan practices, such as and of course that's the commandment that is, you shall not take the name of Yahuwah your Elohim in vain. And we've talked about this before, how taking the name in vain is more of how you live your life, how you represent the Father in what you do, what you say. And so this chapter 14:1 through 21, talked about don't do like the pagan cultures do, cutting yourself, shaving your eyebrows or your forehead, and also clean and unclean food, what you put in your body. If you're going out, having a pork sandwich, that's not representing the Father very well. So what we're going to be talking about this week, Deuteronomy 14:22, all the way through 16:17, although I don't think we're going to be covering that much. Talks about tithes, the sabbatical year, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And of course, we know that that is the fourth commandment, which deals with remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. So we see, even though in those passages he's not talking about the weekly Sabbath, he is talking about Sabbath days and the sabbatical year. So with that in mind, I just wanted to let you guys know this, because I was going to save it to the end till we got to the end of 25, but I thought we might not be here for a couple of weeks, so you could write these down, study it out for yourself, and see if I'm right, or if I'm just a little nuts. Who knows? But so far, that seems to be it's following this pattern of following the Ten Commandments. So as we go along, we'll because I don't think we're going to get through this Deuteronomy 14 through 16 tonight. We'll probably have to pick that up when we come back in a couple more weeks. So we are in Deuteronomy 14:22. The only thing I wanted to do is just go back to 13 just for briefly, because one thing we didn't talk about, I don't think we did, was about what this commandment means to Judaism. I don't know if you've ever seen the 119 Ministries video on Deuteronomy 13, but to the Jewish mindset, they can't follow Jesus because of this scripture. But Christianity created a Jesus that lets his followers eat pork and shrimp and worship on Sunday and not the Sabbath day. And so to the Jewish mind, it's like, I can't follow this guy. Why are you trying to convert me to this? You say he's the Messiah, but how can he be the Messiah? And you say it's okay to eat pork? It's okay to worship on Sunday? That's not right. So it's just something that, we need to be aware of the way they think, and not, you can't just go and, try and convert Jewish people and say, well, what, he's the Messiah. Why don't you follow the Messiah? And so that makes sense, right? Any comments on that, Paul? Al, I saw you reaching.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because that's a huge stretch, because it's pretty much going after other gods.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that takes away of the Torah. I mean, you don't expect the Messiah that had been promised all the way from the beginning to come and do away with all the instructions on how to have a relationship with God and how to have a relationship with one another, and just say, nah, it's done away with. Just follow me and be happy, and kumbaya and all that other kind of stuff. It sounds very foreign to us now.
Yeah.
But we walked in those ways to a great degree ourselves, or at least most of us.
And there's probably a great misunderstanding on the part of Christians in general that I've met a lot of, even when I was walking in Christianity, not understanding, well, why can't the Jews just accept Jesus? I mean, I just don't get it. But Deuteronomy 13 kind of gives us an idea why. Anyways, with that, we'll continue on with 14. We're at 14:22, which deals with tithes. Let me get my notes out here. Or tithing. In Deuteronomy 22:14, 4:22, you shall tithe, or you shall tithe. Now it's interesting, in the Hebrew it says aser te aser, and the literal translation is to give a tenth, you are to give a tenth. That's pretty interesting, huh? Doubling up, yep. Very important. So it comes from the word, you could see the word eseret. Eser is the word 10. This is actually aser, but it's the same ein, shin, resh root word. So yeah. So you tithe, you shall tithe, or to give a tenth, you are to give a tenth of all the yield of your seed that comes from the field year by year. And before Yahuwah your God, in the place that he will choose to make his name dwell there, you shall eat the tithe of your grain, of your wine, and of your oil, and the firstborn of your herd and flock, that you may learn to fear Yahuwah your Elohim always. And if the way is too long for you, so that you are not able to carry the tithe, when Yahuwah your Elohim blesses you because the place is too far from you, which Yahuwah your Elohim chooses to set his name there, then you shall turn it into money and bind up the money in your hand and go to the place that Yahuwah your Elohim chooses and spend the money for whatever you desire, oxen or sheep or wine or strong drink, whatever your appetite craves, and you shall eat there before Yahuwah your Elohim and rejoice, you and your household, and you shall not neglect the Levite who is within your towns, for he has no portion or inheritance with you. So at the end of every year, they would get their tithe and all their firstborn sheep, cattle, goats. They would take those to the place designated, whether it would have been Shiloh or Jerusalem, because I think those were the only two places he actually put his name when they were in the land. And, take it there at the end of the year, which I would assume would have been the time of Shavuot, if I'm not mistaken. Would that be correct?
I would say that they're bringing it on the
one of the
trips.
3 trips.
Well,
yeah.
they're probably bringing it each trip.
Yeah.
So they're what they're bringing in of the barley, what they're bringing in of the wheat,
Right.
and then on the Shavuot, what they're bringing in of the grape and all the other things. So a couple of questions I want to present is, what's the difference between the first one, which is year by year,
Mm-hmm.
and the second one, which is every third year?
Yeah.
So that's question number one. And then the second thing I wanted to ask or bring forward was the in the second one, the third year. Well, let's answer the first one, then I'll propose because it may get answered.
He covers that in the next paragraph with every third year. Not yet, no. Well, every year they, let's read it, then we can break it down. At the end of every 3 years, you shall bring out all the tithe of your produce in the same year and lay it up within your towns. And the Levite, because he has no portion or inheritance with you, and the sojourner, the fatherless, the widow, who are within your towns, shall come and eat and be filled, and Yahuwah your Elohim may bless you in all the work of your hands that you do. So it seems like every third year, there's a 7-year cycle, which we'll cover in the next section, the sabbatical year, or the Shemitah. And so first and second year, you would bring your tithe to Jerusalem. The third year, you would leave it in your towns for the Levites in your city and sojourners. And then fourth and fifth year, you would go to Jerusalem again. The sixth year, you would leave it in your towns again. And then the seventh year would be the Shemitah year. And I assume there would be no tithe because you have no harvest. So
Just what they pull from the ground. So in the year, by the first and second year, who gets to eat it?
they do at the yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Who said they do? You did. That's what I.
So it's the tither and the Levites.
Levites. Yeah,
In the third year,
it's just the Levites. And
it's divided 5 ways. Levites, the orphan, the widow, the stranger,
right.
and the tither.
Yeah, this just says the sojourners, but well, what I read is that it was generally just beer because they didn't have distilled spirits in that day. So I don't know. They were like hops. Well, there's nothing wrong with Paul doesn't drink beer. He just has a cooler or something. Well, they're going, to celebrate. Each time they're going up, it's for one of these feasts that we're going to read about in a little bit. Either Passover or unleavened bread, Shavuot or Sukkot. So they're joyous occasions, and they're permitted as long as they don't get in the car. I don't think they had any cars. Yeah. Yeah. But they were commanded to rejoice at these times, and a little bit of wine gladdens the heart, but don't overdo it. Definitely.
It's interesting to me how the food could last for 3 years. They must have dried it, or they surely couldn't can it. It says,
Like in the third year? I think it was
Yeah.
just the harvest of that year. Yeah.
well, but they didn't get any more till the third year thereafter. So it must have supposed to have lasted all that.
Yeah.
But if the people that had it in the town weren't going to get any more for 3 more years, they must have had something.
The field ungleaned. So they've got now all of these farmers are also, in addition to bringing that tenth, they're leaving a corner of the field ungleaned for the people that I'm guessing that first and second year and the fourth
Yeah.
and fifth year, they've got something to eat. You figure, here's the vineyard guy, it's a corner ungleaned. Here's the guy that's growing the wheat, it's a corner ungleaned. Here's the olive guy, he's got a corner ungleaned. So here's the guy growing pistachios, there's a corner. So you've pretty much, the apple orchard and all these things, there's something for the family to go get. And it's think about it, it's quite a system.
It's kind of equivalent to the modern day grocery shopping. You go to the Webb's field, then you go to the Archer's field, and then you go to the Naraho field and the Hebron field, and then you go home because you're able to glean from all those things, because the oranges here, the figs, and then the peaches, and then the barley, and
peaches.
yeah. So.
So I think it's very interesting, the whole agricultural and how it all makes sense, but how does it apply to us nowadays, because we're not in the land of Israel, and also we're not agricultural. So
Yeah. Well, generally we tithe with our money, and yeah.
And earlier before we started, I was saying that this is something I never learned growing up in church, that, we were only taught there was one tithe, and that's it. You didn't think about that there would be a tithe for, the alien, the eight. Test. That's okay. I was talking too much, huh, Ward? Thank you. I didn't think about the fact that you're tithing for the alien, the stranger, okay, the orphan or the widow, or I'm using a different mic, but no problem. So, and even tithing so that you can have the funds to go to Sukkot and so on. Because a lot of people don't think about the third tithe, or if there's a third one, what is the second one, and what is the first one? Because Scripture talks about more than one.
Yeah.
If you think about it, on the seventh year, instead of a quarter of the field ungleaned, it's the whole field.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
it's a whole lot more for everyone to eat from, because the whole field is there for everybody that's hungry. So it's showing even more abundance of everyone is satisfied and filled on that seventh year.
Right.
It's got to be a really joyous time.
Yeah. The seventh year is just growing wild. You're not planting anything or cultivating, but yeah. Yeah. Kind of the same concept when they were gathering manna. They had double manna on the sixth day, to last them through the Shabbat. Okay. Anything else? All right. Chapter 15. At the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a release. And that is the Shemitah, and the Shemitah does mean release. And this is the manner of the release. Every creditor shall release what he has lent to his neighbor. It's also interesting that word for creditor in Hebrew is Baal. So you better be nice, or you don't want to be a Baal. He shall not exact it of his neighbor, his brother, because Yahuwah's release has been proclaimed. Of a foreigner you may exact it, but whatever of yours is with your brother, your hand shall not release. But there will be no poor among you, for Yahuwah will bless you in the land that Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you for an inheritance to possess. If only you will strictly obey the voice of Yahuwah your Elohim, being careful to do all this commandment that I command you today. So the plan is to have no poor people, but the caveat is if you obey everything I instruct you. Always something, right?
I wanted to mention that the word remission, of course, is Shemitah, but that we've talked about it a couple times. So the Greek word is aphesis, which in the New Testament is forgiveness.
Mm. We've been released. We're released from bondage. Yeah. Interesting. We read that. For Yahuwah your Elohim will bless you as he promised you, and you shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow, and you shall rule over many nations, but they shall not rule over you. So he set up a system whereby if you had poor people, they would be taken care of. There's no welfare system here. We're not, let's not depend on the government. We need to depend on each other. And had they continued along that path, the promise was that you'll lend to many and not borrow. And you shall rule over many nations, but you shall not rule. They shall not rule over you. Yes, Paul.
Yeah, it wasn't supposed to be a system of getting rich.
Mm-hmm.
It was a system of helping those in need. And so, because it was such, they were not supposed to charge interest to their fellow man. And I
Right.
didn't say that they couldn't charge a surcharge or an interest to the
Foreigners.
nations.
Yeah.
It was the poor among them and those among
Just
them.
their brothers.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm thinking that even the poor that were the sojourner and so on, but the outsider outside, referring to the nations,
Mm-hmm.
that was another matter.
Right.
But I could be wrong. Check it out.
If among you one of your brothers should become poor in any of your towns within your land that Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you, you shall not harden your heart or shut your hand against your poor brother, but you shall open your hand to him and lend him sufficiently for his need, whatever it may be. Take care lest there be an unworthy thought in your heart. And this is once again that word Belaya al that we looked at in back when we were talking about the unworthless fellows in chapter 13. Same word. And you say, the 7th year, the year of release is near, and your eye look grudgingly on your poor brother, and you give him nothing, and he cry to Yahuwah against you, and you be guilty of sin. So he's telling them, the year of release is coming up, and your brother comes and asks for a loan, and you're thinking, well, if I loan him the money, then, he's never going to pay me back, and, But as Paul was saying about the system that Yahuwah created was designed so that there would be poor people, but the poor people do not have to stay poor. There's no perpetual poorness. People were like given a chance to get out of their poverty and, make their own living. Yes, Mark.
Find it interesting that this phrase, to close your hand, in the Greek,
Mm-hmm.
it's literally to tighten like a fist your hand.
Yeah.
And then when it says to open your hand, the Greek word is to unlock.
Ah.
So how awesome we've learned that when you're giving and you're a giver, you unlock something. You unlock the blessings of the Almighty that come to you. Otherwise, you've tightened and restricted the blessing because you have become restricted.
Yeah, and even the phrase tight-fistedness means miserly. So where did I leave off here? 7th year. Freely, and your heart shall not be grudging when you give to him. Because for this, Yahuwah your Elohim will bless you in all your work and all that you undertake. For there will never cease to be poor in the land. So up in verse 4, he said, it says, there will be no poor among you. But down here in verse 11, it says, there will always be poor. However, I think what he's talking about is there will always be poor people, but those people who are currently poor don't have to stay poor. There's always going to be somebody in need. There's always going to be people in need who are going to need help. It's just not a perpetual same person, over and over again, or the same people. There's not a class of people who are poor, so to speak. Kind of like what we have today. People get in poverty today, and it's like, it's almost impossible to get out of poverty these days, if you're there. But in the design of Yahuwah, you will have poor people. They're just not going to stay poor. You know what I mean? Yeah. And here's that, what you were talking about there. You shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy, and to the poor of your land.
Didn't Tammy or Bob mention that the priest, that one verse was he had open hand or something about the hand? So I'm wondering
I
if
don't
there's a
remember.
connection here with that, open hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, when they like do the blessing or what? Yeah, yeah. If your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, is sold to you, he shall serve you 6 years. The 7th year from you. So this talk is about the 7-year cycle. Now I don't know if these were like, say, a guy was went into the service of a man, say in the 3rd year, then I guess he would be released. He would work 6 years and be released 7 years from then. That's the way I picture it. Not necessarily on the actual year of release, although I'm not exactly sure about that. And when you let him go free from you, you shall not let him go empty-handed. You shall furnish him liberally out of your flock, out of your threshing floor, and out of your winepress. So I looked up this word furnish. The actual is this word a neck, and the literal meaning is to adorn like a necklace. And the way it's used here is a figurative example of how it is used, where you furnish your servant. But I thought it was interesting that you're actually adorning him with gifts. You're lavishing him. Yeah.
Furnish and liberally are the same word
Yeah.
in Hebrew and in Greek. And what's, I think we're watching, this is another evidence of Torah being walked out before Sinai.
Mm-hmm.
Because if in the Greek word, it literally means to supply for a journey. So so what did Joseph do for his brothers? He supplied them for the journey. He packed the mule full of the grain so that they go on the journey. He was walking this out in Egypt because this was passed down from father to son on how to treat the one you're letting go.
Yeah. That's a good point. As Yahuwah your Elohim has blessed you, you shall give to him. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and Yahuwah your Elohim redeemed you. Therefore I command you this today. But if he says to you, I will not go out from you, because he loves you and your household, since he is well off with you, then you shall take an awl and put it through his ear into the door, and he shall be your slave or servant. I guess servant would be a better word, forever. And to your female slave you shall do the same. It shall not seem hard to you when you let him go free from you, for at half the cost of a hired worker he has served you 6 years. So Yahuwah your Elohim will bless you in all that you do. So once the guy or gal, you have a question? It's 15:12 down through 18. So once the guy or the gal, the 6-year period is up, and his master is going to release him, he can choose to stay and be his servant for life. So they did this thing where they took the owl, which was like a pointy instrument. I guess they would stick it right through the lobe of their ear and put them up against the door and pop it in. Can't leave now. Yeah. Was the door or the doorpost? Yeah. Yeah. So this was a a ceremonial ritual that they did, and it was actually a legal and binding contract once they did it. And I think John would like that. Go ahead.
You think Eleazar had Abraham,
Yeah, I think so.
and he had already probably walked it out?
Yep.
And
That's a good
I'm
example.
guessing that when he goes to Abraham's family and they see this man with the hole in his ear, they know exactly who he is.
Yeah. So they would know that he's speaking for Abraham. And for the master, he might be thinking, oh man, I'm going to lose a good man, you know? Yeah. Yeah. Now, it doesn't mention it in this passage, but in the other passages about this, which I believe I think it's in Exodus somewhere, it talks about if he's married before he becomes a servant and has kids before, he can keep his wife and kids. But if he gets married, if his master gives him a wife and they have children while he's still a servant, if he chooses to leave, he can't take his wife and kids. So I would have thought or think that would probably be a big incentive for staying too. You know, I mean, I love my master, I love my wife and kids. Or maybe you don't like your wife and kids and you want to go. I don't know. I'm free.
We've talked about this before, but you know, if you've got a really good owner that's owning the lands and everything, you are a slave to him, and he's treated you well. You know, I mean, this is like ultimate retirement. I mean,
Yeah.
you're never going to have to worry about anything from this point going forward. You're going to be well taken care of in this guy's camp.
Yeah. Pretty good gig, I would say. Because you're thinking, well, he's giving me all this stuff, but now I have to go and, you know, start over. What if, you know, I fail and end up back where I am? You know, maybe it's better to stay here. Paul?
It also depends on their situation, because if they had land in their name or the family land because the you know, the inheritance, then it may or may not come back to them at that time also.
Right.
So, you know, and it really depends. But if you're a foreigner and you're coming in and you see this as an opportunity, then yeah, that's kind of like a good job.
Yeah.
You know, and we do that same thing here in most of the world, where we go work for the company. If the company says, you know, if you want to stay here, you can retire here. But if you want to leave after you get so many years experience under your belt and go and try your hand in another company, you're welcome. And yeah, so they don't send you away empty-handed if they're
Right.
firing you. But if you're leaving on your own, you may get your vacation and whatever time. But the point being is, it's kind of a work for hire scenario. So.
Right. Get a nice severance package. Okay. Verse 19. Unless anybody had any other comments or no, okay. Oh. Remind me of your names. David and Kim, okay. All the firstborn males that are born of your herd and flock you shall dedicate to Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall do no work with the firstborn of your herd, nor shear the firstborn of your flock. You shall eat it, you and your household, before Yahuwah your Elohim, year by year at the place that Yahuwah will choose. But if it has any blemish, if it is lame or blind or has any serious blemish whatever, You shall not sacrifice it to Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall eat it within your towns. The unclean and the clean may eat it. It were a gazelle or a deer. Only you shall not eat its blood. You shall pour it out on the ground like water. So all the firstborn males of their flocks, sheep, goats, and cattle, that pretty much covers it, right? Are dedicated to Yahuwah, unless, of course, they have a blemish of some sort.
Didn't notice this before, but we do know that the gates is where business and all these things would take place. In the Hebrew, it doesn't say within your gates, it's saying at the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to eat this gate of the city. And so this probably was if you've got quite a few people bringing their firstborn animal, and they're pretty big place for bonfire, and everybody's,
Yeah.
slaughtering this firstborn animal right here at the gate. This is like sealing deals, contractual thing, stuff happening at the gate. So this is a big deal.
That's interesting. And in this Bible, which is the ESV, it says towns, but in the Hebrew it says gates. I wonder why they translated it towns. It's interesting. And of course, we've read before about eating blood was strictly verboten. I almost said verboten, but verboten, forbidden. German coming out. You pour it out onto the ground like water. So, okay. Anything else? All right. Maybe we will make it through the end of this. Only about 20 minutes. Okay. Chapter 16. Observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover to Yahuwah your Elohim. For in the month of Abib, Yahuwah your Elohim brought you out of Egypt by night. And you shall offer the Passover sacrifice to Yahuwah your Elohim from the flock or the herd, at the place that Yahuwah will choose to make his name dwell there. So when I was reading this, and then other reading that I was doing, I noticed that they say you can take it from the flock or the herd, which implies that the flocks were the sheep and the goats, herds were cattle. But in the original Passover, they only took it from their flocks, either a sheep or a goat. So it might be, maybe you got to feed more people, so you need more food. Maybe the ox or the bull provides more. And also at the place Yahuwah will choose to make his name dwell there. So in the first Passover, they ate it in their homes, and they were told not to go out till the morning. But here he's telling, when you go into the land, because unleavened bread is a festival, one of the, trying to think of the word, pilgrimage festival, where they would go to Jerusalem. He's telling them, you will eat it at the place where I tell you, which would have been Shiloh or Jerusalem. So I'm thinking in the millennial kingdom, when it comes Passover time, we're all going to Jerusalem. So that'll be pretty sweet. But now, I mean, for where we are now, I think we kind of do it where family by family, or smaller groups, because we're not in the land, and there's no temple, there's no designated place currently, like there was back then, or will be. So we know that Jerusalem will be the place to be, when we get there. That'll be pretty cool. You shall eat no unleavened bread with it. 7 days you shall eat it with unleavened bread, the bread of affliction. For you came out of the land of Egypt in haste. And a lot of times the matzah is called bread of affliction. That all the days of your life you may remember the day when you came out of the land of Egypt. So the purpose of celebrating the Passover for today is to remember coming out of Egypt. Now, we didn't actually come out of Egypt back then, but we've come out of Egypt, modern day Egypt. We've come out of idolatry, our sinful lives, and he's delivered us, to be here today. And that doesn't mean we'd have actually made it to the promised land yet, but we're working our ways there. So it says to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. So that's what we're doing. No leaven shall be seen with you in all your territory for 7 days, nor shall any of the flesh that you sacrifice on the evening of the first day remain all night until morning. So we eat the unleavened bread for 7 days. The fact that we just don't eat unleavened bread, we just totally just get it out of our houses, right? Any leaven in there and just throw it out or do whatever with it. Are crackers leaven? Hello. Give away unleavened bread? Oh, you mean your leavened bread, you mean? Leavened bread, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could give it away, I guess. You could give away a dead animal to the foreigner. Take it to your neighbor. Hey, you want this bread? Go ahead, Pat.
I noticed a few years ago when I had been practicing no leaven in the house, and I didn't eat much bread year round.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't hard at all to not eat the unleavened bread during that time. But it says here that thou shalt eat unleavened bread for 7 days. So I decided I better eat it whether it tasted good to me or not.
Yeah. I kind of like the leaven. Like get those crackers, the matzah crackers that are unleavened, and put peanut butter on them. It tastes good. Yeah. Peanut butter's not leaven, is it? Depends on the peanut butter, I guess. Oh, there was one point I did want to make about the Shemitah year. When Judah was kicked out of the land the first time, they went to Babylon, and they were 70 years. And it actually says it in 2 Chronicles 36. I'm going to read it here. I can find it. Okay. 2 Chronicles 36. In verse 20. He took into exile in Babylon those who had escaped from the sword, and they became servants to him and his sons until the establishment of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of Yahuwah by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed its Sabbath. All the days that it lay desolate, it kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. So if you think of 70 years, 1 year for every 7 years, that means that for 490 years, they weren't keeping these sabbatical years. I don't know if it actually says that, but that's kind of like, seems what the math indicates. And that would put them, I don't know if it was like off and on or here and there they did a sabbatical year. I don't know, but total of 490 years. And I think they were from the time of Joshua until around that time that they were exiled. We're probably looking at a good 700-800 years, I would think. So good portion of that time, they were not keeping their Shemitahs. Yeah, they didn't even know at the end. I mean, they found the book of the laws. What's this? Go ahead.
So, side questions.
Mm-hmm.
Is Shemitah something that we could observe today? And if so, how? And that's just something to think about. And then what you already covered about lending money without interest. Should we lend money? If so, why? And if so, how?
Should we loan money?
Lend money to our brothers. And
I think if you lend money to your brother, you shouldn't charge interest.
So I'm asking, should we, and if so, how? And then should we even attempt to do a Shemitah year? So, let's just say I have a business and I have a brother that took out a loan or whatever do I release that on the Shemitah? Because
If he's a brother?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you're a loan shark or something, or
No, let's just say
like
that
you
I'm
have
a
a
car
business.
dealer. I'm a car dealer.
Okay.
And just
You know,
and Mark comes in and he buys a car, and it's typically they don't finance more than 7 years. But let's just say that he comes in and he's buying it, and it's a 10-year finance. Do I dismiss the loan after 7 years?
If it's for your brother, yeah. Maybe that's why they only go up to 7 years for car loans.
Coming on the 6th year.
Well, but when does it reset to be the 7th year? So it may not even be like that. It's kind of like, if I plant, if I clone my tree, my lemon tree, and I plant it, when do I get to eat of its produce? I mean, this is just, these kind of things at least I might think
if you
about.
plant it, I think it's like the 4th year, 3rd or 4th year. Yeah. I think in the 3rd year you give it to Yah, and the 4th year it's yours to eat. And what was the other question? Or the first one? Oh, the Shemitah. Yeah. Should we be doing that today? I think so, but I don't know when the Shemitah year is. People speculate. Didn't you say it's coming up soon? I guess for a year of a Shemitah year, you can just tell your boss, I'm taking a sabbatical. People take sabbaticals, and if you were a believer and if you knew when the Shemitah year was, you could say, I'm going to take a sabbatical for this year. Yeah. Maybe the world was shut down for a year and everyone took a sabbatical, and then we'd all be better off. Stop all the wars and all the killing and everything. Just 1 year, that's all we ask. Yeah,
see how some of this plays into people's minds. So I could see how this couple, they're thinking about getting married.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, why don't we do it, we get married right after the Shemitah. We got a Shemitah year of the land's laying rest. We're not working the field. I get married to you and I get a year vacation again because I
Yeah.
don't have to,
I got you.
So I'm sure some of that playing the system
Yeah.
in many ways with the people that weren't thinking righteously, givingly with their heart. Because he says in here, you did these things not from your heart. You did it in
Right.
a self-motivation way.
Let's see, did I read the end of the Passover here? We'll start in 8 here. Oh, okay. For 6 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there shall be a solemn assembly to Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall do no work on it. So that's the 7th day of unleavened bread. Isn't the first day also a holy convocation too? I believe.
And so this first day of unleavened bread, it's 7 days is what? If you look at the word 7,
Mm-hmm.
it's the Shavat, it's 7, so it could be a period, it's like Shavua, it could be a period of 7 of anything.
Yeah.
But here it's saying 7 days. And so it's considered a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first day of unleavened bread is the first day of the week.
Mm.
And we would normally think in the New Testament when they're saying that that's Sunday.
Right.
But I contend that's not what it was.
Okay. Verse 9. We got a few more minutes here. You shall count 7 weeks. Begin to count the 7 weeks from the time the sickle is first put to the standing grain. Then you shall keep the Feast of Weeks to Yahuwah your Elohim with the tribute of a free will offering from your hand, which you shall give as Yahuwah your Elohim blesses you. And you shall rejoice before Yahuwah your Elohim, you and your son and your daughter, your male servant, your female servant, the Levite who is within your towns, the sojourner, the fatherless, the widow who are among you at the place that Yahuwah your Elohim will choose, to make his name dwell there. You shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and you shall be careful to observe these statutes. So we count 7 weeks from the Rashit. What do they call it? The Rashit? Or the first fruits. I knew Rashit's in there somewhere, but we count 7 weeks and then celebrate the Feast of Weeks. Now, the Feast of Weeks, or Shavuot, is actually the time when they left Egypt and they went to Mount Sinai. That's the time that's marked when they received the commands. So we're back to the 10 Commandments here. So the Shavuot is celebrating the giving of the law at Sinai. It's also the day in Christianity we call Pentecost, which is the giving of the Spirit, pouring out of the Spirit to the church or the assembly at that time, and it's the same day. And I'd always heard of Pentecost when I was in Christian church. I remember when I found out that it actually means it was the giving of the law. It like blew my mind. I was like, whoa, because I never really put the two together, but that is the significance of it. Oh, yeah. 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 So we'll save the feast. Well, we're going to have to save the Feast of Booths for a couple more weeks. Anyways, thanks for being here tonight. Thank you online. And let's say a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for your word, your blessing. You are a great and mighty and awesome Elohim who's poured out to us your spirit, given us your law, your commandments to teach us how to live, how to obey, and how to have better lives. We thank you so much for this. We thank you, pray this, for all, and thank you for all your mighty acts in Yeshua's name. Amen. Thank you.